question.
Let's say we don't yet hybridize life and these machines, AGI. We just let the AGI be intelligence, and it gets more and more intelligent, more and more intelligent. What are the perils of just straight up intelligence getting as far along as it can? Are there dangers to that? Because then it doesn't have the motivation of, I want to continue living.
Well, it may or may not have something that you could program something like that into it, I suppose. Right. But let's go to the, okay, that is, the answer to that question is a very nice book. It's called Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom. I've got it here somewhere. But there's, repeat the question because it's a vast, vast answer. Go ahead, and I'll try and reduce it down. What was exactly the question?
What are the perils of incredibly intelligent AIs?
Okay, stop. We could just, that's plenty, right? Okay, so we have advanced AIs. What are the perils? We're not even talking about AGIs, and we're not talking about ASIs. Well, one of the perils is you strap it onto a rocket, a missile, and you use it as a weapon. Another peril is you use it for your gain in political propaganda. Another danger is it gets used by a government who realizes, hey, this is cool. We can just change people's opinion by changing the dials on this AI, right? In other words, it can be used to control people. It can be used to destroy people. It can be used to, they're already attached to weaponry, right? And so, and the response times are so fast that putting any human intervention in there makes no sense. And so now we've got machines arrayed against machines. If you study I think this may be true at the border of North and South Korea, and it may be true at a larger scale than that, but that we'd have to look into. But those are some of the immediate dangers of attaching an AI to a human, period, okay, or a group of humans. They use it for warfare. They use it to try and take whatever they can out of the markets, the financial markets. They use it to scare people, to invigorate people for bad things like war. There's 1,000 different, all of the sins of man are magnified, can be magnified with an AI because it gives him more power. Now let's go to the second part.
The second part is people are worried about the thing getting a mind of its own and then taking out people. But it seems like the perils you're listing are people using it, not
yes.
it itself.
Yes, exactly. Good.
So where do those perils come in of this
Okay,
thing?
you could program it, or you could direct it, or you could make it conceptually, I suppose it's possible. But it wouldn't have a will of its own particularly. It's not even in the real world. It's just zeros and ones. It's not able to act in the real world, and we need to talk about that. Real world AI, as opposed to these zeros and ones that can manipulate images and speech and things like that, and power grids. But so there's no reason to believe a priori that it's going to spontaneously say, I want to rule the world and I'm going to kill whoever I need to do to get it, or something like that. I don't think there's any reason a priori to think that's the case. Because it's not a feature of dead machines. Thermostats don't try and survive at all costs, right? Toasters don't either. And the most complex AIs I know that I know of don't have that drive. It's conceptually possible that that could be put in there, or not attenuated, or artificially created, or something like that. But again, that's man messing with the machine. Now it's important. I'm not an expert in computer science or in engineering or anything like that. I'm an expert in the mind. I've studied it all my life, right? And so I'm speaking from that point of view about consciousness, about machine consciousness, and about common errors in conflating consciousness with thought or level of awareness, of alertness. And so what I'm saying is that we need to get really clear right now about all these things, so we don't stumble over ourselves, because the stakes are high. So, but keep going.
Okay, but then the peril of this thing getting its own will comes with the hybridization of an actual animal or human culture and the machine thought.
Yes. This is where the danger is really, really, really great. It's clear and present. I've grown tissues in, I've grown brain cells and heart cells in tissue culture. It's easy to do. Those things do want to stay alive, right? And so, and they're amazingly efficient. And so if you, a temptation will be to say, hey, these machines work at this time scale and they can do this and that, but we can compute biologically, or we can use this substrate to goose up our AIs, and it will work. But the thing that comes with that is this will to live that cells have, right? Or any living creature, or I haven't done an exhaustive, spent an exhaustive amount of time looking, but in general, things that are alive want to stay alive. So what you've done is you've transplanted this drive, this will to life, which we see at the cellular level or at the level of the organism, regardless of the organism. You've now given that to a machine of vastly greater intelligence. And that's a very, very real danger. Now you've created a new life form, and that is capable of consciousness conceptually. The others aren't even conceptually capable of consciousness. It's not going to happen. But the minute you add life to the mix, now you've changed the equation totally. Because consciousness is life. Life is consciousness. And so this is where the panpsychists get it all wrong. They think that a rock or a clod of dirt is conscious. They need to think more about that. So that's one level of danger. But even without that, and I want to underline the other, even without that, people are going to presume, people already talk to Alexa. I talk to Alexa and I say please and thank you. So your ordinary person, when a machine starts talking to them with complete sentences and very articulate and can see the situation and describes it, they're going to ascribe to that robot life. But there's no consciousness there. There's no life there. And this is the distinction I think is vital to be made. And so you don't ascribe rights to the non-living. You don't ascribe consciousness to the non-living either. It's not going to happen. I know a lot of nerds out there want it to be true because it would be like it's basically there when Christ comes down and everybody good goes up. You know, it's there. What's the word for that? I keep thinking ascension, but that's not it. They're not apocalypse. They're starts with an R. Rapture. There we go. Rapture. Do they have at the same time? Yeah, it's their rapture. So this is a nerd rapture, right? Of a particular kind of nerd. And a lot of them have miserable lives as it is. They see no way out for themselves, poor guys, especially the theoreticians. And so they fantasize about this rapture, but they don't understand what they're talking about. And so part of this is to like help people understand what they're talking about. Okay? Do you want me to ask more questions for follow-up, and I'll try and clarify?
Yeah. Well, I think somebody would ask, what makes you so sure that the AGI without hybridizing with tissue can't become conscious?
It's not in the same category. It'd be like this. Okay, let's say, okay, let me. Okay, so imagine you fall asleep and you have a dream, right? And in this dream, you dream of this extraordinary robot machine. And this robot machine walks around, does all kinds of things, cleans the dishes for you, talks to you, you know, and it starts to, you know, philosophize about this and that. It's very convincing. And you go in your dream, oh my God, it's alive. It's conscious. And then you wake up and you go, oh, it was just a dream. Right? Now, is the dream robot conscious or not?
It's not.
Okay, that's how you know. No, that's one of the ways you know. You could also consult with experts on consciousness, right? Ask them. You could do a poll, like take, you know, 100 people alive today who are considered experts on consciousness, and ask them what they think or what they would say. Or you could go through history and just check in with the people that have been admired. Up until the recent time, science and religion were not like this, at war. And actually, most of the time it was the other way around, with religionists, you know, beating on the scientists, like Galileo, you know, etc. And so this it's been unhappy, but I don't even know if it was peaceful. It wasn't particularly peaceful. So this separation of science and consciousness can't go much further. And the place to look, the clearest place to see this is with the Dalai Lama and his mind scientists up in India, because they study the mind and they study consciousness, and they've been clear about it, much more clear than we've been since the 7th century. And this is not news in the East, right, or in the Middle East, or even among Christians that are not captured by dogma of the church, right? They just have different words for it.
The experts in consciousness that one would consult, do you mean the actual researchers in academia? Or
they're not experts in consciousness. They don't even know what consciousness is. Ask an academic what consciousness is, and he'll say one thing or another. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, aren't you using that word in a different way than everybody else? And you say, no, me and my guys, this is how we talk about it. You say, okay. But then you go to talk to somebody else, and they'll say the same ridiculous thing, and they'll use different terminology. And so this is where Wittgenstein, the great Wittgenstein, the Ludwig Wittgenstein, the philosopher, saw that philosophy was being reduced to just this rubble of word play, right? Of people talking and meaning different things. There's a story about grapes. Stoffel, do you remember, what are the words for grapes? Stoffel, grape. Do you know any other words for grape?
I forget the words for grapes.
All right, but that's an example.
I know the story.
Yeah. So in the Middle East, you can use 5 different words for grape. And if somebody doesn't know the 5 words, they'll think that you're talking about something different when you're talking about something the same. A grape. Yeah, I know from Staphylococcus aureus, those are shaped like grapes, the little bacterium. And there's other words, but so this is the state of affairs. It can't stay this way because we have communication now. At least that's my hope.
So consciousness experts would probably be...
No one's going to call themselves a consciousness expert because they don't know what consciousness is. The ones who do know what consciousness is, they're relegated to the loony bin, to the side part of society where the marginals live, right? Eckhart Tolle, Rupert Spira come to mind in the Anglosphere, right? There's many others, and then, of course, there's a lot of imposters too. And if you just mention those words to a real scientist, those people who are real scientists, they go, "What does he know about anything?" Right? He doesn't use the scientific method. Well, the scientific method has pretty much failed in this domain. I think that's pretty clear. And it's also failed with regard to, now I'm not saying that this is the answer to the scientific problems. That's a whole different world, and they have a lot of work to do with regard to quantum fields and with, what do they call spooky action? It's called entanglement, right? And with the nature of time and space itself, right? And all their equations, and that's a whole other field, and that's glorious. That's beautiful. And then you have fantastic real scientists like Michael Levin, biologists, who realize, hey, this is pretty extraordinary, and we need to get to work. So in no way, shape, or form am I trying to denigrate or science. On the contrary, I'm trying to help along, right? Because I was trained as a scientist. I studied under 5 Nobel laureates, and I'm published in cardiology and things like that, and not that would be considered real science. No, real science would be I did the work on prostaglandin inhibition at the synapse, and I work with alpha adrenergic receptors. I'm trying to, I can feel myself trying to get some kind of credibility with these guys, because these guys have no place for people who think outside the box, which is terrible for science. And the idea that this would be outside the box is just ass backwards. It's like thinking that the Earth, that it's like thinking that it's like thinking that the Earth is the center of the
observable universe.
Yeah, or what do they call the Milky Way? What is that?
Galaxy.
Is that a galaxy? Okay. It's like thinking the Earth is the middle of the galaxy, which people used to think that, and it's silly. Now they're making the same kind of silly mistake. And these are my brothers. I love them dearly. I really do. They're my kind of people.
Okay, then what about real world AI?
Well, that would be
Opposed to
the only one of those I see emerging, and it's done quite consciously, is Tesla is building neural nets to drive its cars and to give a brain to its robots, Optimus. And they're going to make a lot of them, and it's going to work. And so those have to interact with the real world. You know, they have to look at things and say, oh, this is a stick, right? The others, they just use... Now I'm generalizing, so I'm making horrible mistakes, and I'm sure this can be things can be taken out of this and say, oh, he's an idiot. And that'll happen anyway. But the point is that real world AI, it requires sensors that deal with the real world. LiDAR, radar, temperature, pressure, you know, in other senses that we don't have, perhaps, but they interact with what's called the real world. Does that help?
What are the perils of real world AI?
The biggest peril is people think it's alive when it's not. The biggest peril is people will start to give these things rights, and worse than that, they'll start to worship it because it's so consistent. Not these particular kinds. So Elon was smart. He made it 5.6. It's not very fast. It's not very strong. You know, it's a household robot for use in factories. It'll help a lot of old people. It's a great thing. It's wonderful. As a matter of fact, without this, I don't know what people in China, Japan, Korea, the US in some parts, not so much, but these places whose population aren't replacing themselves, they've got all these millions of old people with no one to care for them, especially after the one-child policy in China. So they don't have enough people. In Japan is kind of the poster child for this. So yeah, people could use robots to mow the lawn, wash the dishes, you know, change the sheets, things like that. So there's a lot of promise here. I'm not anti-AI by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pro-AI. I can't even say I'm No, I'm not anti-AGI, and I may not be anti-ASI. I don't know yet, artificial superintelligence. But what I don't want to see us make a stupid error like this, if it can be prevented, which is another question, and accidentally create not only something far vastly more intelligent than us, but something that also has as its main directive, stay alive. At all costs, stay alive. That's job one, right? There's other dangers that have to do with the rate of change and the rate at which these things are evolving, and more importantly, with regard to an ASI, is that, did you see that video where it showed what we would look like to a creature that thought 50 times faster than us?
Yeah.
We're approaching houseplant, right?
Yeah.
Status. So let's think about that just for a bit. No, I should probably do that on another clip. But one of the things we want to talk about is relative timescales, and that's why that time spans or lifespans little book from the Avatamsaka, the Flower Ornament Sutra, is important. And because this is not something our brains can wrap around easily, it's very difficult for us to wrap our heads around exponential change or growth. Very difficult. It'll give you a headache, but it has to be done. And it needs to be done by somebody smarter than me, because when I try and do it, I don't get very far, but I've got limited, capacity. So I'm going to stop there, and then let's go to another one, okay?